BookTube. I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. I've been sitting here waiting for this stupid cement truck to move, but I've been waiting more than 5 minutes and a bit of a traffic jam, so I think this mic is powerful enough that you can't hear it as loudly as I can. So this is my Friday Reads, and I'm sitting at a new location. Here's a picture. This is a little mushroom-shaped, really ugly. It's been painted green, and over top or underneath was orange. It's really hideous. And there's two stone, you can see in the picture, two stone chairs. And it's the only picnic bench type thing, maybe that I've ever seen in Tokyo, but certainly within 10 kilometers. So I have gotten, this is the second video I've made this morning, and I've gotten so many dirty looks from people because this is the only place where people can sit down and put their coffee cup on the table. Like, it just, Japan doesn't do that. It's just taboo or something. So I'm here with my can of hot coffee, which is almost done and not very hot anymore. And I have lots to say. So the first thing I have to say is I bailed on, I'm not going to talk very much about bails. I'll save the bail report for the end of the month, same time that I do my wrap-up. I'll do a bail wrap-up. If I don't bail on so many, it'll be included in the normal wrap-up. If there's too many, it'll be separate videos. But I will say that among the several bails this week, I bailed on both of the non-fiction books that I had started this week for Nonfic November. One, and I'll go into it more later, but one, because it was just too detailed. I had enjoyed hearing about the book, reading a review of the book, and that was really all I was interested in. So as soon as we started to get down into the weeds, and this happens so much with nonfiction for me. Magazine article length, okay. Book length, no thank you. It's too much information. One of my favorite activities of my day is watching Steve Donahue open his mail and discourse thereon. But I don't need to read the book. I love hearing him talk about it, and that's enough for me most times. The other thing about that particular book, I was doing it on audio, was that because this is another of my pet peeves about nonfiction, the writer was employing novelization techniques in a really terrible way, like just ham-handed. Made my skin crawl. So I bailed on that one, and the other one, the subject matter was interesting to me, but the writing, the prose, was just terrible. And that's another thing that I often find with nonfiction. So I am hereby announcing my Nonfic Nov-Exit. I am withdrawing from Nonfic November. This is my Nonfic Nov-Exit. That's probably only cute to me, but so yeah, no. I have to choose more carefully the books, the nonfiction books that will hold my interest. I have to be deeply interested in a detailed exploration. So for example, I have the new hot biography of Princess Margaret coming in the mail to me. Now that's a book that I can sink my teeth into because I am obsessed with Princess Margaret. But as a general rule, fiction. I want fiction. Now, Tome Topple, I made a kind of, was it whiny? No, it wasn't whiny, but I'm not sure what the purpose of that to Tome Topple or not to Tome Topple video was, other than that I was just itching to try out my new iPad tripod. But the more I think about that, I don't know whether I will do Tome Topple. Again, I'm not going to regurgitate it because I've said this several times, but I'm just coming off 10 months of very demanding reading challenges, so maybe I'll do Tome Topple. I've started 2 of them today, or yesterday and today, but that may be all I do, and I'm just not going to commit to anything like that for a while, and that feels really good. So, yes, I started this Polish novel that I've been giddy about ever since I bought it last weekend, Bolesław Prus's The Doll from 1890. I started it last night, And, sometimes I get so excited about a book and then I just read the first page or the first chapter. It's like, oh, that's not what I want. But this, I read only the first chapter. It's like 5 pages, but these are short little print. Small, tiny print. And I loved it. I'm completely charmed by the writing. The translation is by David Welsh. It's really lovely prose. And I'm already sucked in to the story in 4 pages. This scene is happening in a bar, and I read the first paragraph on my book haul video. I'm not going to read an excerpt from this one today, but basically it's like a gossip scene at the local tavern about the main character, Wokulski. Based on 4 pages only, the first chapter, I think I'm going to really enjoy this. Not only fondle it because I love playing, but it's such a funny shape and whatnot. So, very excited about that. I also started the audio book of the tome that I mentioned in that tome topple video the other day. The title is The Resurrection of Joan Ashby, and the author is, and I think I've gotten the pronunciation of her name, which I didn't have when I made that video, Charisse Wallace. Spelling seems like it should be pronounced otherwise, but according to the audiobook pronunciation, that's Charisse Wallace. It's so good. I started it this morning. I woke up. I was so excited to make these videos. I need to get a life. But I was so stoked to get up and finish planning to make these videos and shoot these videos that I think I've been awake since 4 a.m. and probably look like it. That I started listening to the audio of it, and I listened to about 40 minutes of it, and it's good. So I don't think as many of you have watched the Tome Topple video, and there's not really any reason for you unless you already have. So I am going to regurgitate a little bit about this novel. It's a 2017 novel. It's 550 pages. I don't know if it's her debut. I don't know that, but she's a Los Angeles writer. It's a novel about a novelist, or about a fiction writer whose name is Joan Ashby, and she wanted to be a writer since she was a child, and she wrote a list of 10 things, 10 precepts, 10 rules that she should adhere to in order to become a writer. One of them was don't ever get married, the other was don't ever have kids. And then as a very young, I think she was not a teenager, but as a very young woman, she had 2 collections of short stories published that took the world by storm. So she was like an overnight sensation, and then at the age of 25 she got married and had a kid and disappeared from literary society for 30 years. So that's the premise of the book. And the book opens with a magazine article as she's coming back after 30 years, which summarizes all of what I've just said to you, and then excerpts. I haven't finished that chapter, so I don't know how many, but excerpts a few of those stories from 30 years ago. So what I'm going to read is from one of the stories, just to give you a sense of the writing. I think the writing is really good. But also the audio narrator is really good, so it's a book that I can just listen to. I have downloaded the ebook as well because it was so cheap on iBooks, 700 yen, so about $8. I'm not going to read it and listen because I need to have this as something that I can walk around and listen to, or listen to on the train. But I wanted to have the ebook. Have I had too much coffee? I am... Calm down, Sean. Take a deep breath. I don't need to apologize for my passion, do I? What was I talking about? Well, I just read it. You're geeking out about the fact that you got the ebook. Like, who cares? But the reason I wanted the ebook is to be able to copy and paste quotes, because I put up lots of quotes on Litzy and in my Friday reads and whatnot. So here goes. So this is an excerpt from the fictional writer's short story. So how is that for meta or nested story? And I've forgotten the name of that story. I didn't make a note of that, but it doesn't matter. In this story, which is quoted in this novel, The protagonist is a woman who's in a psychiatric institution of some kind. And she has a nickname for her psychiatrist, Owlman. This morning, after Owlman shuts the door, but before he begins the usual grilling, I jump in and say, "Got something for you, Dr. Samuel Swan." And it's fun watching his head rear back because I've used his real name. In the beginning, my hands were shackled, bound together with those plastic handcuffs. But today I've been delivered with my hands belonging to me. I hold them up now, say, "No weapons, just something I've got for you, something that will make you sing and set me free." Slowly, so slowly, I reach down into the crevice between breasts once lovingly admired and pull out a sheaf of pages. Already the handwriting looks foreign, shaky and disturbed, not at all the beautiful penmanship that used to win me gold stickers in childhood. You want to know the thoughts that assail me when I first wake? Well, here you go. 10 pages of my true beliefs. And I drop into Owlman's flushed palm the whole of my life. I like that. So I'll let you know how it goes, but I've started it and quite hooked already. Next, I want to tell you about a book of short stories I started on audio this week. This was raved about, especially on BookTube, by just one reader. I was already aware of it; it was on my radar. But fairly recently, he did a review of it and said it was probably going to end up being his best book of the year. And to be honest, this is a discussion video that I'm thinking about making. Is like sometimes I feel nervous about reading somebody's favorite book. Like, what if I don't like it? So I'm very happy to report that based on the first story only, I am blown away by this collection. It's called Fortune Smiles by Adam Johnson. And the first story is called Nirvana. And it is so strong. Such a powerful story. I'm not even going to say anything about what it's about or anything. Just read it. Really enjoying that. And the audio was good. I am doing this as an audio-text combo. I've mentioned it before, John Boyne's The Heart's Invisible Furies, but it's been a while since I explained what the hell I mean by an audio-text combo, so let me briefly do that now. Sometimes audiobooks don't work for me because I have trouble staying focused, like especially if I'm out and about or on the train or walking around. Sometimes it's really hard to just stay focused on it, so if it's a really good narrator, one whose voice I respond to, I have no trouble. And I think that the narrator of The Resurrection of Joan Ashby is going to be like that. Certainly, I'm finding that the narrator of this John Boyne novel, I can walk around and listen to his beautiful Irish accented narration without having the book. But for me, the deepest way to experience a book is to do the audio while reading. The example that I've used before is Wolf Hall. I read that book while listening to the audio, and there wasn't one sentence of that book that I read without having the headphones in my ears and hearing it. And of course, it slows you right down, but that to me is the best part of it, is that it slows me right down, and I just fell into that novel and didn't want to get out. So when I do that, it's really deep experience, and that's what I'm doing with John Boyne. But because the narrator is so good, sometimes, for example, when I'm eating, I'll just close the book because I'm eating and just listen to the audio and then pick the book back up. As a general rule with this one, I'm doing them both in tandem, and it's rich. However, I'm not quite as sure about this book. Everybody and their dog on Goodreads and Litzy and Book, I haven't heard much about it on BookTube, I don't think. Just loves it, and I think I'm still loving it, but it's blurbed by John Irving, and I think they're friends, and it's really reminds me of John Irving's fiction a lot. It really does. And I like some of John Irving's, and some things about John Irving's writing. But the protagonist here is Cyril Avery, who's an adoptee. He ends up becoming gay. He's already gay. He's 7 years old, and he already knows he's gay because he's made this a friend of his father's lawyer's son, whose name is Julian Woodbead, and they've had some sexual show and tell episodes already. But Julian Woodbead, more than Cyril, but Julian, 7 years old, like, yes, there are precocious children in the world, but he talks like an Oxford-educated 30-year-old. It's still very early days. I'm on page 92. It kind of turned me off. Like, do I have to suspend belief to that degree that there's an actual 7-year-old that talks like that? I'm not so comfortable with that, but it's still really holding my interest. I'll keep going with it. And I mentioned this, I think, last week. Still reading it, The Lost Garden by Helen Humphreys. I'm really loving it. The writing is so beautiful. It's about a 35-year-old spinster, that's what they called anybody of that age who wasn't married in 1941, who leaves London during the Blitz and goes to the countryside, Devon, to a requisitioned manor house or estate. She's a horticulturalist, and she is to supervise the planting and harvesting of potatoes for the war effort in this abandoned country estate. And she is not a people person. She's very lonely. Really well done. The characterization is superb. It's a short little book, but the writing is just amazing. So this passage, which is a paragraph and a bit, is about roses. So there's all kinds of stuff about gardening. I'm not a gardener, but I'm just finding the writing about gardening so lush and beautiful. And this is about a classic text about roses, which, if you're a gardener, which I'm not, you might already know about. It's an antiquarian book. It's called the Genus Rosa. How do you say genus? Genus or genus? I should have Googled that. I'm going to say genus, and please bear with me if I'm mispronouncing it. Of all my books that I have dragged down to Devon from London, the grandest is the Genus Rosa. Miss Wilmot's Encyclopedia of Roses is in 2 volumes, each huge and heavy, weighted down with her botanical earnestness. I haul them from my luggage, lie on the floor, and pull 1 volume onto my chest, 1 onto my stomach. I did this in London when the German bombing became more frenzied this past winter. Actually, I started the ritual of comfort a few months before that, when my mother was dying in hospital. I lie under the Genus Rosa on the floor of this, my temporary home. I can see all the dust under the bed next to me. The room still smells strongly of fire. The books press down on me. Surely no one could weigh as much as the Genus Rosa. But this is what I imagine. Someone. This is what I think about. Love. So I'm going to close with a poem that I think is just achingly powerful, and it's heavy. So I think almost all of us are aware of Eric Garner, the African-American man who was killed by police when they were put an illegal chokehold on him. That was filmed where he's exclaiming, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe." This is a poem about him by a man named Ross Gay, and this was going around on Twitter, so maybe some of you have seen it. I'm not going to do my usual goodbye or Sean the Book Maniac sign. I'm just going to close with this poem because just end on this note. So it's called A Small Needful Fact by Ross Gay, and the title of the poem is also the first line of the poem. A small needful fact is that Eric Garner worked for some time for the Parks and Rec Horticultural Department, which means, perhaps, that with his very large hands, perhaps, in all likelihood, he put gently into the earth some plants which, most likely, some of them, in all likelihood, continue to grow, continue to do what such plants do, like house and feed small and necessary creatures, like being pleasant to touch and smell, like converting sunlight into food, like making it easier for us to breathe.